Hi friends, how are you all doing? Welcome to Cozy Rosy Reads. My name is August, and today we're going to talk about all the books that I read in the month of May. Doing a May wrap-up right now just is not what I want to be doing with my time. I'm not going to lie. I honestly feel like I've talked about them so much already because I've done so many reading vlogs with these books, and all of those will be linked down below if you want to hear more in-depth thoughts. So I don't really think I'm going to be spending a whole lot of time on these books, and I just want to move on to better, brighter things, you know? May wasn't a bad reading month for me. It was just a little dry, a little flat. Even though I had such highly rated books, I just don't really feel like I want to gush about them a whole lot. I just kind of want to, this is what I read, and here we go. So in the month of May, I read a grand total of 9 books, which for me is not a lot. Since starting my booktube channel in January, this is the least amount of books that I have read in a month. And that makes sense because I DNF'd so many books in May. I DNF'd 2 physical books, and then I think I DNF'd 2 or 3 or maybe even 4 audiobooks. Things were just not clicking for me. I wasn't having a very good time with reading. It felt like a chore a lot of the times, and then I just kind of realized I'm allowed to DNF books. So I did only end up reading 9. Let's just go ahead and talk about them in chronological order. The first book that I read in the month of May was What Counts as Love by Marian Crotty. This is a collection of short stories. It's a very small book that I ended up giving 4 stars overall. This is a book that mainly deals with those who are born female and the experiences that women have to face, starting from a younger age and growing all the way up. There are severe trigger warnings in here for sexual assault, for sexual violence, domestic violence, eating disorders, basically almost everything. I liked every short story in here except for the last 2 stories. So I gave it 4 stars overall, which for a short story collection, that's really, really good. I highly recommend this book if you're interested in hearing just really small fragments of different women's lives. Marian Crotty is a really talented author. She is able to get into so many different voices and dialects and perspectives that it's just mind-blowing to me how well she can write stories and narratives and dialogues that feel so real and just such a fragmented way. They're just so small. We just get tiny glimpses of lives, but they just felt like such fleshed out characters. They felt really incredibly real. So overall, 4 stars. I really love this short story collection. It is now my favorite short story collection of all time, honestly. This next book is a book that I actually deviated from my May TBR, which my partner actually chose for me. And this is a book that I just found randomly at Goodwill. I picked it up and I finished it in 2 days. I freaking loved this book. And that is Mangoes, Bananas, and Coconuts by Himilce Novas. It is a Cuban love story. This book is not for everyone. I've talked about this one super in-depth in one of my reading vlogs, along with What Counts as Love. So if you're interested in more in-depth thoughts and passages and discussions around both of those books, I will link that vlog down below, and it's going to be called the Feminist Lit Reading Vlog. So definitely check that out if you want more in-depth things. But this book is definitely not for everyone. I am never going to recommend this book really to anyone. I will just say that I thoroughly enjoyed it and I really liked it. There are a lot of trigger warnings in this book yet again. There is pedophilia, there is some incest, there is cannibalism, all things under the sun. But this is a work of satire. It is extreme feminist satire. This author is a huge feminist, and it is just such an interesting book that perfectly melds fairy tale folklore kind of storytelling with magical realism, but then it just weaves a lot of elements of psychological suspense and just a lot of behavioral issues throughout the book where you're ooh, I think there might be a clinical diagnosis here. And I just really, really love that storytelling. I thought the language in here was so beautiful and stunning, and I really, really loved the use of repetitive motifs and metaphors and symbolism throughout the entire book. It's a really short book. I thoroughly loved it. Not for everyone. I am not recommending it. Okay? And I already cannot wait to reread it. So I ended up originally giving this book 4 stars, and over time, in the past few weeks since reading it, I have thought about this book so much, I bumped that up to a 5 star. This was a 5-star read for me. personally, okay? Pinky promise, I'm not recommending this to you? Okay. Next, I finished listening to an audiobook over on Libby called Deep and Dark and Dangerous by Mary Downing Hahn. This is actually a book that I read when I was a young lass, okay? I was like in 6th grade when I read this book for the first time. I read it physically. This time I listened to the audiobook, so it was a childhood reread. Frick, it was so good. It was so much fun. I just had such a great time with this book. So this book follows a young girl. She has a very interesting relationship with her family, and her family has interesting relationships with their family members. She gets to spend the summer at this cabin, this lake that her mom really didn't want her to go to, and just spooky stuff starts happening, really eerie things. If you are a fan of like horror movies or stories that involve like children, and like children being really cruel and evil, and like it gives you the creeps, I definitely recommend this book. There is just a lot of eerie elements. This is like a YA thriller horror kind of thing, and it was just honestly a lot of fun. It was a great way to kick off the rest of the like summer season. I just love thrillers that are like kind of beachy, summery. This was just perfect. 4 stars. The next book that I read is definitely the book that had the lowest rating, unfortunately, for the entire month of May for me, and that is The Hourglass Factory by Lucy Ribchester. This is a pretty hunky book. This took me a very long time to get through. That's probably why I didn't read as many books this month, because this one took me forever because I was not enjoying it at all, which makes me so sad because I thought this book would be so perfectly up my alley, but I ended up giving it 2.5 stars, and on Goodreads I rated that a 3. I was trying to be nice because I honestly feel so bad when I really don't like a book. This takes place in the early 1900s, and it follows the early suffragette movement, but also includes a lot of dark elements that I personally really love, like dark circuses and macabre elements, corset factory. Like there are just so many different elements in here that I thought I would just absolutely fall in love with. I did not. Unfortunately, this book did not click with me. I thought the pacing was super weird. I felt like there was so much more that our characters could have given us. Throughout the entire book, our main character, whose name I have forgotten, Frankie, that's her name. Frankie, so many obvious apparent allusions to the fact that she is a lesbian, but like no one freaking actually just says it or talks about it. There's no sapphic relationship in here, but it's constantly talked about that she has a secret, that she is different. And I just really hate that. Like they never just addressed it. It still felt like it was making it like taboo in here, and I just was not a fan. This was like such weird pacing. It literally made no sense to me. It was kind of like a really slow burn Scooby-Doo episode where everyone's like running to get clues, but then things would like slow down. They'd be like, oh, like hurry up and wait kind of feeling. Like there's an urgency. They're literally running around downtown London and trying to find all these different things, but then they can't find it, so they're just like, let's just talk and get to know each other over coffee and wine, and I don't really know what the heck this was. I just really kind of dreaded reading it, and again, it was long. It's a long book. Overall, 2.5 stars. I do think that this book would make a really cool cinematic adaptation though, because it was so apparent that Lucy Ribchester had like a really distinct image in her head while writing this. Like the scenery and the atmosphere and the ambience was like spot on, which is why I thought I would really like it. But I just don't think the writing style really fit, or the narrative really had any like drive. It was kind of like, here's the setting, I'm not really sure where the story's going, but like we'll figure it out as we kind of go along it. So 2.5 stars. Next, I read What We Lose by Zinzi Clemmons. This is a short literary fiction that's written in different vignettes. Each vignette spans like 1 to 4 pages long. This is a really itty bitty book, and I really enjoyed this book. Overall, I gave it 4 stars. We're following a young woman named Thandi as she talks about the grief of losing her mother, and it talks about like through these kind of vignettes that bounce across time and are scattered, but they're really easy to follow. You just pick up little pieces of personality and how she's dealing with grief and loss. I just thought it was really beautiful. It had a lot of important things that it had to say regarding the life expectancy of people of color versus whites. Talks about the risk of pregnancy and death in pregnancy between people of color and whites. Like it just had a lot of interesting information and topics in here, a lot of actual concrete facts, but it was woven with this beautiful literary fiction and this really strong, captivating voice. So overall 4 stars. I would love to read more by Zinzi Clemmons. Next, I finished another audiobook called The Girl from the Sea by Shalini Boland. This was, again, just a really fun summer thriller, and it was perfect for kicking off the summer season. This book follows a young woman who lives in the UK. She wakes up on the beach. She has complete amnesia, doesn't remember anything. She then tries to figure out what has happened to her, if what caused her to have amnesia was an accident or was it something more sinister, hint hint, wink wink, and it's just a really fun time. I honestly had no idea where it was going. Even at the end when like the final twist happens, I was definitely like, oh my gosh. I just thought it was a lot of fun. It was just a really easy to listen to book. It was really captivating. I never got bored listening to it, and I just really enjoyed it, so 4 stars. Next, I had another childhood reread, and that was the Anybodies by Anybodies. I had a very lengthy reading vlog discussing and reading out loud passages of this, so I will go ahead and link that video down below for you all as well if you want to hear some more in-depth thoughts. But I think this book needs to be considered classic children's literature. I think way more people should read it. I think that this should make every other kind of children's classic literature, like the Chronicles of Narnia or a series of unfortunate events, like legit run for their money, because this is so freaking good. I think way more young people need to read it. I just had such a blast rereading this. This was one of my favorite books as a kid, and it definitely stood the test of time for me, and I just really, really highly recommend it. 5 trillion gold stars forever and ever. The Anybodies by Anybodies. Next, I read a book that has been intimidating me for like 3 or 4 years, and that is Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card. I finally freaking read Ender's Game, and when I started reading it, I did enjoy the writing style. I was really pleasantly surprised about how accessible this book was. I think it's just the sci-fi cover really kind of freaked me out, but overall, I just gave this 3 stars. I can see why people really enjoy this book. I just didn't get it. Like, I felt no connection to any of the characters, and like the ending was so poetic and beautiful, and I wish the ending went on for like 20 more pages, a little bit more in depth, because it was super surreal. It was really bizarre. It reminded me of like The Sirens of Titan by Kurt Vonnegut, which I loved. Like, I just wanted a little bit more absurdity, I think. And like, I just really didn't care. I didn't care about Ender. I didn't care about his family. Like, again, I 1000% respect people who really, really love this book. And I totally understand why people thought I would really love it, or they highly recommend that I read it. I'm really, really happy and glad that I read it for myself, and now I can have my own thoughts about it. But like, once I finished this, I just didn't think about it again at all. Like, it had 0 impact on me, and that breaks my heart. But like, it wasn't a bad read. I think definitely like halfway I picked up on what was gonna happen already. Like, I knew where it was going. I just predicted all of it. I was really underwhelmed, but it wasn't a bad book, so I just kind of gave it run-of-the-mill 3 stars. That is Ender's Game. And the last book that I read in the month of May was Haroun and the Sea of Stories by Salman Rushdie. This was perfect way for me to end the month of May, because this is like a super whimsical YA, anybody could read it, any age group, magical realism, fairy tale, folk tale, fable thing, and I just really, really enjoyed it. It is super enchanting, very colorful. It follows this father and son duo as they travel into this like alternate universe where stories and storytelling and the art of storytelling like fuels the entire world. There's a lot of dichotomies in this. There's just a lot of like really intense and rich scenes that just have so much like metaphor and symbolism behind them, so it's easily accessible for young readers, but it's equally as fun for older readers. So like, just 5 stars. I loved this writing style. This was my first Salman Rushdie book, and it definitely won't be my last. I would love to read more, but this was just such a great read. And again, I did talk about this one a little bit more in depth in another reading vlog, so that will be linked down below as well. So there we have it, my friends. These are the 9 books that I read in the month of May. I'm sorry if this video was like super lackluster, but like, I already feel like I've talked about so many of these, and I'm just like ready to move on. Overall though, I am so incredibly grateful that I was able to read 9 books in May. Some of them were great, some of them were not so great, but like, how lucky am I that I got to read these? I mean, for real. So thank you all so much for being here. I hope wherever you are, you're doing incredibly well. Thank you for staying tuned. I would love to hear what your favorite book of May was. What was your least favorite book of May? And if you've read any of these books, I would absolutely love to hear your thoughts, or if you plan on reading any of them. I've definitely heard that quite a few people have picked up the Anybodies and What We Lose after seeing some of my reading vlogs, so definitely let me know your thoughts on those. And I will see you all again very soon in my next video. Stay cozy, my friends. Bye!